We're taking a look at Texas's offensive roster today. It's not going to necessarily be just a depth chart. We're not going to just factor in, oh, I think this guy's going to be productive this year. We're going to talk about that, but it's going to be also a focus on the overall level of talent on the depth chart. Maybe not necessarily just on the two deep this year, but maybe even the two deep next year. We're not going to touch recruiting all that much, but we're definitely going to look at some kids that probably redshirt this year. So that all being said, my first reaction of looking at Texas's roster this year is that there's just a whole lot of talent. You know, you remember in 2016 against Notre Dame when people were talking about Texas being back after the first game. That's not necessarily, one game doesn't make a program back, right? That's kind of what the media was picking up that year, and obviously it didn't work out. That whole Charlie Strong era didn't work out well. Damn, I'm dating myself. That was 9 years ago now, which really I remember watching Swoop's score. Felt like that was like last night, to be honest. Anyways, it wasn't last night because a lot has changed in Texas. The changes don't happen in one game. You know, one game doesn't make a program back. I think years of good recruiting, of good development, of good talent identification, that kind of stuff adds up. And I think you're seeing that with Texas's roster this year. So we're just start with the quarterback room here. Just to remind you all of the grades or inform you all of the grades. We have four grades for the upperclassmen. Star, good, above average, average, all pretty self-explanatory. And then 3 grades for the non-upperclassmen, you know, kids that are more developmental. I don't feel good giving them a grade like relative to the rest of college football, just how I think they are as prospects. So sometimes I'll give a sophomore a prospect grade. Sometimes I'll give a junior a prospect grade, and a sophomore a more upperclassman grade. Just depends on their development. How much they've played doesn't really mean all that much. Just my opinion on them, and something that's fun to look at for me after the fact and seeing how many each team has. So just looking at the quarterback room, it's hard to say that this quarterback room hasn't regressed, and that isn't necessarily that I think Quinn Ewers is better than Arch Manning, but having both of them in the same quarterback room, that just doesn't happen in college football. You know, for a kid like Arch Manning to suck it up and sit for 2 years is one of the smartest things that could have happened. You could tell he's got a very smart camp, and I believe it, you know, with his uncles, his dad, his granddad all being involved in football for a while. For him to sit around and be a backup for 2 years, you know, redshirt his first year and backup last year, you don't really see that with this top end talent, and it costs these kids a lot of money. You watch a kid like Jaden Rashada really couldn't sit, had to transfer to go play. This kid's not even in NFL talks anymore. So for a kid like Arch Manning to be a backup last year to Quinn Ewers, you know, not respected by NFL teams, you know, wasn't drafted in the first 2 days of the draft, still a hell of a college football player. So losing him, I think Arch Manning definitely has the potential to be better, but I still have a prospect grade on him. I think all the stars look like they're aligning for him and his development. Everything I see kind of meets the eye test. I just have to see more games for me to feel comfortable about saying this kid is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. This kid merits first overall pick. I certainly think that he has the talent to do so, and to be honest, the talent's one thing, right? We watch a million recruits every year, and a lot of them are talented. A lot of them are really talented, but at quarterback, it's more about those mental intangibles. And it's very rare to see a kid grow up in a football family like this and have the talent that he has and have the intangibles that I think Arch Manning has. You know, I don't know him personally, but just assuming with the family he grew up in and all that, I think this kid's got potential to be very special. That being said, I don't think there's a whole lot behind him right now. I think there's guys that could develop and turn into something, but you know, like last year, you had a perfect situation where you have Ewers, you know, the seasoned veteran, and then if he goes down, you got a kid, Arch Manning, that can give you good enough play now, but you can also be excited about him for the future. If Arch Manning gets hurt, God forbid, I don't really trust these guys to be all that effective in this offense this upcoming season in 2025. This kid Caldwell, Troy transfer, I don't really think you can expect all that much out of him. Joe Tatum, don't know that much about. Now, KJ Lacey, I love this kid. Watching his Alabama Saraland highlights, I love this kid as a pocket passer. I think he's athletic, but I don't know because I didn't see him run. He's just friggin' slinging the ball. This kid's got the chance to be very special. I don't know if he actually ever plays at Texas just because Diabell's committed right now, and we'll see how that all plays out. But that being said, KJ Lacey, very skinny. I don't think he's a guy that you can feel good about playing this year. Trey Owens, you know, 4-star prospect, only a redshirt freshman. So they got 2 young kids that could be pretty good. But I think for this upcoming season, I think you got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and if he gets hurt. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not trying to play through worst case scenarios, but this is the pragmatic look we have to look. Well, on the two deep, I don't feel too good about the quarterback room right now outside of Arch Manning. That being said, taking a 2024 look at it or a 2026 look, next year, reasonable chance Arch Manning could be back. It's kind of obvious that he's kind of immune to the NIL thing, in my opinion. I don't think he just could get bought out by another team. He ended up at Texas despite all that. The point I'm trying to make is I think more than other kids of his caliber, I think there's a legit chance Arch Manning is back next season, which would be massive for the program. But even if he's gone, these are two kids that we can start talking about next year to feel good about playing, plus Diabell if he sticks. So that's how I feel about the quarterback room. It's good now, as long as Arch Manning's healthy. Until then, then we're going to have some actual questions to answer about it, but we'll see. We'll let it play out. Running back room, yeah, not a whole lot. I said that about Notre Dame before watching. Not a whole lot to say. It's one of the best running back rooms in the country. I said that about Notre Dame's. And then I was like, I don't know if I'm going to watch every other team in the country, or the big schools at least. I don't know if I'll find another running back room that's better than Notre Dame's. This one's pretty close, not going to lie. So CJ Baxter, absolutely love this kid. Loved him in high school. Ended up at Texas. Absolutely phenomenal his freshman year. And then heartbreaking right before his sophomore campaign. Or I don't know if it was right before, but I know it was before the season even started. Ended up missing the whole year, got hurt in camp. So last year, this kid was on ice, didn't play at all. Wisner stepped in, hell of a running back, not a guy I was really familiar with. I don't think he was a really big prospect, really big recruit when he was coming out. I don't remember him. Watching the film last year, this kid's very good. I don't think he's necessarily a guy that we're going to be talking day one or day two in the NFL draft like we will about CJ Baxter, but I think he's a very good college football running back. I think he runs with really good vision, something that I noticed with him, that he really lets the blocks develop, which makes you more athletic when you have blockers in front of you, in the sense that you don't have to be Superman if there's nobody there. I can run through good holes if I'm patient enough. But anyways, yeah, Wisner rather, his come up was massive last year. So yeah, you lose a guy like Blue, that hurts. Very good running back. It's hard for me to not say this running back room is better than it was last year, just with CJ Baxter coming back, because he's a hell of a player. I absolutely love his frame. 6'1", 230, this kid's listed at. He's explosive for 6'1", 230. Real nightmare to meet at 5 yards when this kid picks up a head of steam, or even 7 yards. So between those two are very good running backs. This is a good grade I gave him. Baxter's a kid that I probably would have a star grade, like top 5 in his position in the country, if it wasn't for the injury. So we'll see how he bounces back from that, and then I'll feel more comfortable, kind of having a higher grade on him. Jarrett Gibson, another kid I absolutely love. So you got two very good backs, and then you have a very good third back. Really shifty, really explosive. Really liked his frame. Whole lot to like with him. Probably won't. He'll see a decent amount of playing time this upcoming season, but I think in 2026, if Wisner goes to the NFL, when CJ Baxter probably goes into the NFL, this is a guy, Jarrett Gibson, I absolutely feel good about giving the load of the carries to. I think he looked extremely good as a true freshman, and I think he'll look good this year in limited action, and then in 2026 is with a bit more. Ricky Stewart, I love this kid also. This kid, massive, and he is hella fast. I really can't believe how explosive and really great long speed for a kid that's as big as he is. Another guy, probably won't see him that much this year. I would hope that they don't burn his red shirt this upcoming season. I think you'll see him maybe in mop-up duty, but definitely a kid that at 26 we're going to be excited about to watch a bit more. James Simon, 4-star, and watch him. Christian Clark coming off an injury. So I definitely think it's a deep room. I think the top two are as good as a 1-2 punch that you'll see in the country. And behind that, they have guys that I think not only can develop into something good, but I think they're good right now, and they can contribute this upcoming season as well. Now, taking a look at this receiver room, going to be a bit tough to replace the production that Golden and Isaiah Bond, 2 first-round receivers there. Golden ended up in the first round. Bond, in my opinion, would have ended up if not for the off-the-field stuff. But that's neither here nor there. Point being, a lot of talent left. But here's something I was thinking. You know, I watch these rosters very early in the morning, so I have the whole day to marinate. Looking at the production last year from the receivers, very good, but they didn't develop Golden. They didn't develop Isaiah Bond, two guys that got developed elsewhere and showed up in Texas were extremely effective. That's not very reliable because every time you do that, there's just as many people that miss. Golden absolutely hit on him. Bond absolutely hit on him. But for every Golden, for every Bond, there's two or three guys that teams miss on, and I think it's risky business, and I think it's also kind of expensive to have to buy that talent from the portal every year. Worked last year for Texas, but I don't think it works every year. The good news is that they're not going in that direction this year. Looking at the roster, a lot of homegrown guys. DeAndre Moore, good receiver, very productive, gonna be even more productive this year, and I'd expect just with the vacuum left by Bond and Golden. Ryan Wingo, one of the top talents in the country coming out of high school. Whole lot of burn as a freshman, and I think he's going to even be better this year. I gave him an above average grade just because he's so young. He's a true freshman, or he was a true freshman. He's a true sophomore this year. But at the same time, I didn't feel good giving him a development grade because I already think his development's at a level where we can call this kid an actual contributor in college football, and very well could take the step to be one of those premier names, along with like a Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams. But we'll let that happen first. We'll not try to speed up this kid's progress. I think he's going to be very effective this year. So those are two names I just mentioned. How are they outside of that? They're very young outside of that. Mosley, Stanford transfer, productive last year. Outside of that, I think a lot of this talent is very young, but I love this receiver room. They brought in four names last year that I think, I don't know how old y'all are, but you're going to go watch Texas football for the next 20 years. I don't think they're going to bring in another receiving class with this much talent because Jamie French, hell of a football player. Loved him at Mandarin in Jacksonville. Khalil Lockett, I absolutely love. Just an elite separator with great ball skills. Both at 6'2". I think these are guys that will contribute this year. It's a bit thin in the receiver room ahead of them. And when I say thin, I just mean I think they're better than the older guys ahead of them. I think they both have the talent to be better than Mosley this upcoming season, and maybe even DeAndre Moore. I don't think week one you'll see them tear up the world, but Khalil Lockett especially is a kid that I'm very high on. After that, Michael Terry, good football player, listed at 6'3". More of a up and down guy. I think French and Lockett are good separators, but Terry's not necessarily a guy I'm going to trust to separate at a high level, but definitely a guy that I trust in the ball possession game. Being bigger than guys, out physicaling guys. You need guys like that too. A lot of the guys they have on the roster aren't that. They're just not that. Dalen McCutcheon now. I can't believe I'm 13 minutes into this video and I haven't even mentioned Dalen McCutcheon. Absolutely love this kid. I think this kid has the potential to be better than Jamie French and be better than Khalil Lockett. And I know Texas followers or recruiting followers are going to think I'm crazy for that, but just a kid that I watch the film and it just clicks for me. Every now and then I'll watch a kid that I get biased about him because I want to have kids that I'm different than the consensus on, but absolutely love this kid. Very twitchy. I think he's going to stretch the field at an elite level. I'm very excited to see how he looks after Texas's strength and conditioning. I don't think this kid's going to contribute in 25. I think, at 5'10", looking at him in high school, senior year of high school, just physically he's not there yet. Like Khalil Lockett and French are a bit closer. Maybe they aren't even there yet, but the good news about all four of these guys is they're all on campus. They've all been learning the offense. They've all been in the weight room. They've all been doing conditioning, all that, running hills, whatever the hell that they do there. Parker Livingston, couldn't find a senior tape, but a 3-star. Aaron Butler, 4-star, couldn't find a senior tape. But yeah, definitely a room I'm high on. Maybe last year you're going to look at it and be like, wow, the 2024 receivers at Texas were better in that individual season. But I think as a program, you got guys that are very young that are going to contribute this upcoming season. I think it would be more fun as a Texas fan to watch these guys. As good as Golden and Bond were, they weren't Texas guys. Golden was a Houston guy. Bond was an Alabama guy. I think in 3 years we're going to look at this recruiting class of 2024, and I think all four are great. But just playing the numbers game, only one, whatever. I think in 4 years you're going to look at these guys and be like, these are real Texas guys, and maybe you'll I think remember them more than Golden and Bond. But hell of a receiving room this year, in a very good spot. Just got this kid Bishop from Willis, Texas. Two-way player. I think he's a receiver. Go watch this tape if you haven't, because that kid's special. But we'll see if that holds up. Jack Endries was a kid. Now moving on to the tight end room. I got to do better at announcing this. Jack Endries, tight end, transferred from Cal. I think he was actually a walk-on, but put up 600 yards. So you don't really see tight ends put up more than 400 yards, to be honest, unless they're something good about them. So they just picked up that kid. Didn't really watch him too much. Couldn't really find that much film on him. Like I said, this is supposed to be more of a focus on the future as well. Spencer Shannon, 6'7", couldn't find any tape. Jordan Washington, really like this kid's release. Real sudden for his size at 6'4". Emery Winston's a guy I liked a whole lot, but he's just kind of at that weird middle of the pack frame where he's 6'1", 250. If you guys follow, I assume you guys follow like SEC ball. If you remember Jaheim Bell, who he was at South Carolina, ended up at Florida State. You just watch them, and these guys are such good athletes. They're so effective in college. You can kind of game plan with them. But at 6'1", 240, it's just such a middle of the pack. You're too big to play receiver, too short to play tight end. It's kind of similar to Jatavian Sanders, where he's kind of in that middle of the pack, where he's just kind of. But this kid's even smaller, and I don't think he's quite as athletic. I still think he has a chance to be a fun weapon for Sarkisian and AJ Milwee. That's the OC. I didn't know that. I wrote it down. And Nick Townsend, really like this kid, 6'4", very sudden. Really couldn't believe how sudden he was as a route runner for a 6'4" tight end. And then watch, it's so easy to watch tight ends and see all. I get kind of worried watching tight ends when it's all receiving highlights and you see no blocking highlights, because then this kid's probably not that good of a blocker. Didn't see this kid block a whole lot, but I saw him a whole lot on defense. Very physical, this kid Townsend. Very excited to see him play. Again, kid not going to contribute all that much in 2025. Maybe see some burn as a special teams player, but in 2026, definitely a guy that we're going to be talking about next year, I think, pushing for the starting job. That's Nick Townsend, kid I like. So I've been very positive, right? I try to look on the positive side of things. This offensive line they're returning one starter. There's not a whole lot of experience on this offensive line this upcoming season. And if Texas doesn't live up to expectations, I think it's going to be on the offensive line, just because they're so young. DJ Campbell, only starter coming back. I think that kid's pretty good. But outside of him, they're not returning any starters, and they're scarcely returning anybody with experience. So I kind of hate the way the national media is talking about this Texas team, because it's like, oh, it's all going to be on Arch Manning. It's all going to be on Arch Manning. I'm not worried about Arch Manning. I think Arch Manning's going to do his job. I'm just more curious on this offensive line because, like I said, no starters returning, hardly any experience returning. Some guys have played, like I think Hudson's played, 13 career starts. Sorry, he's played more than I thought. So, but outside of him, there's really not that much. Him and DJ Campbell. That all being said, I do trust Chris Ash on developing guys, guy with a whole lot of college football experience. And a lot of these guys are really good. All these guys are 4 stars in purple and a couple 3 stars. It'd be one thing if there was 2 or 3 starters in place and then we're talking about, freshmen, sophomores pushing for the other jobs, but that's not the fact. The fact of the matter is 4 starters got to get replaced. So a lot of young guys are going to have to play. That might come with a lot of growing pains early, and you might see, at Ohio State week 1, it might be rough because that's where the rubber meets the road, and you got a lot of young offensive linemen on the road. That's going to be a tough situation to be in for Arch Manning. So I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I think we'll learn a whole lot about how good this unit is, and then that game specifically. And then after that, I remember them having a bit of an easier schedule, so maybe some time to lick their wounds. But anyways, in 25, very inexperienced. So what does that mean? There's a whole lot of experience to go around to be had in 25. So I think after this season, going into 2026, Ash, Sarkisian, they're going to be able to look at all these guys that have played, because like I said, there's four jobs open for grabs. They're allowed to evaluate every single one of them. They're allowed to see how they take coaching. allowed to see how they develop physically, athletically, and then they're going to be in a much better. This offensive line is going to be so much better next year. I didn't watch a single highlight tape of any of these offensive linemen outside of DJ Campbell, but I can tell you it'll be better next year. Just playing the numbers game with how much experience they'll have returning next year, because these guys are all very highly recruited. You know, Texas saw something in them. Some of them are going to turn into pretty good prospects. Just like I said, pure numbers game. So I think next year, if you lose Arch Manning, you'll be in a position where it's like, okay, we're downgrading at quarterback. You know, we just had a generational type prospect at quarterback. How's our offensive line? You know, our offensive line didn't play great last year, but we saw some things, and we can get after it this offseason. We can be very confident they're going to be better next year for whoever's playing quarterback, be it KJ Lacey, Trey Owens, or Diabell. So what is it? What am I trying to wrap up this whole video with this offense? I think it could be very good next year. Like I said, the national media, I understand why they run away with this narrative that it's all on Arch Manning. Oh my God, it's Arch Manning's time. How's Arch Manning going to play? That's not really if you're an actual football fan, I don't think you're really worried about Arch Manning. Yeah, it'll be very fun to watch this kid play. He's been one of the most hyped prospects, definitely the most hyped prospect I've ever seen in my life. You know, whether that's because of the name or the talent, I think it's because of both of the things. I think the kid's talented because of the name in many ways, but I also think he's starting to make his own name. But anyways, I don't really think that's the story with this offense. I think the skill positions are great. They're going to be great. I think they're going to stack up very well against the rest of the country. It's going to be definitely a positive for Texas. But the offensive line, you know, has the potential to be really good, but it also has the potential to not be very good, and could be a major reason why Texas doesn't live up to expectations this upcoming season. You know, that's all speculation. Maybe they all come in and they're all great, but we'll see how it plays out. Like I said, I trust Chris Ash. I trust Steve Sarkisian. So I think this upcoming season, I think Texas will compete offensively. We're going to watch their defense tomorrow, and I'll give you my opinion on them later. But I think they'll offensively be able to compete and be very good if the offensive line's good. But if not, it might be a bit hard to compete with some of the nation's best. But yeah, we'll see. Thanks for watching. I'm going to watch the defense tomorrow, and let me know what you guys think about all these guys.